Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Rotoworld Football Show, where today, Denny Carter and I will be previewing the AFC West with the help of Sports Illustrated's Gilberto Manzano and Underdog Fantasy's Hayden Winks. Gilberto has been kind enough to join us right off the jump, and he's going to help us talk about the Chargers. He's a former Chargers beat reporter, still plugged into the team. While Hayden will be here a little later in the show to help us break down the Chiefs, the Broncos, and the Raiders. First things first, Gilberto, tell the people where they can find your work. I did say Sports Illustrated, so I guess they know that. But then also on Twitter, X, things of that nature.
Yeah, so I guess I'm on TikTok a lot nowadays. You know, people like to go on TikTok. G Manzano 24. I also have a YouTube channel where we talk pretty much football, but all things combat sports and on Copas on the Beat YouTube. But yeah, most of my day job writing is at MMQB with my colleagues Albert Breer, Connor Orr, Matt Verderam. So we got a good group there. But Pat and Denny, I'm glad to be on the show. I've heard of Rotoworld for many years now, and I'm coming off a plane from Mexico on vacation. You caught me with my mustache, not trimmed. So, but it's a good time. When I hear Rotoworld, I'm gonna be there.
Awesome.
Appreciate that.
The mustache and the beard look very good, by the way.
I gotta trim it down. I keep looking at the video here.
We would do it if we could.
I've tried very hard.
I actually can't grow a mustache. Some people are begging me to do it again, while others are begging me never to do it again.
I'm in the never, please never.
I'm the opposite. When I get rid of the mustache, like, okay, please go back. It's like makeup for men, right? I gotta have it.
It's true. People go back and forth on whether or not you should have it or not, but we won't go back and forth anymore on our grooming. Okay. We'll just get right into the Los Angeles Chargers. And we're going to start broadly, Gilberto, and just what everyone wants to know in fantasy football is, do you expect the changes to the Chargers offense to be like as sweeping and broad as the hype? Because, no team really has been more pass happy, more pass first than the Justin Herbert led Chargers, while no team ever is as balanced or run based as Jim Harbaugh, whether it's at Stanford, whether it's with the 49ers, whether it's with national champion Michigan. He brought in Greg Roman, one of the most famous run oriented offensive coordinators in the NFL. And do you think it will be as dramatic as it sounds like it will be on paper, or will this still be, Justin Herbert's actually going to be throwing this? What are the early signs for this new Jim Harbaugh Chargers offense?
Yeah, as you were kind of going through the whole, Jim Harbaugh and Greg Roman, obviously the notion is running the football a lot. But, like you mentioned, Patrick, I covered the team for a long time as a beat reporter. And, one of the teams that I covered was the rookie year for Justin Herbert. And Anthony Lynn refused to play Patrick Mahomes, Justin Herbert, because he wanted to give him Patrick Mahomes, 1 year off and, go in. And then Brandon Staley comes in. No, forget that. You're going to throw the ball 50 times per game if you want to. So I guess what I'm trying to say is Jim Harbaugh's going to find a right balance, between Lynn and Brandon Staley. But at the end of the day, you still have Justin Herbert. So you're going to throw the ball a lot. Obviously not as much as a Brandon Staley era, Joe Lombardi. But we know Harbaugh with the running style. Obviously, he won a national championship with Michigan. But then you look at the running backs, and it's like J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards. Can you really run the football that much? With guys coming off injuries. Gus Edwards is good, but as a red zone machine, and that's good for fantasy football. But I think you're going to lean on Justin Herbert. Yeah, you have some young receivers too, but you paid Justin Herbert to help these receivers, bring out the best in themselves. So, when you all put the focus on Justin Herbert, I think for him, it's making life easier for him, but you still want him to operate at a high level and save you. There might be some games where you need him to throw, 40 times, in a game, or sometimes it might not be that much, but it could be an efficient performance where he has, 20 passes but 3 touchdowns. So I think it's going to revolve around Justin Herbert. They're going to figure it out. But the Jim Harbaugh days, obviously they tell you they're going to run the football. But I think this first year, you got to figure out the offensive line too. There's some issues there in the interior offensive line. You don't have Corey Lindsey, the center there, who just retired. So it's going to be a feel-out year, but I still feel it's going to be a lot of high volume for Justin Herbert, but just not that high like the Brandon Staley era.
Yeah, he averaged 35 attempts per game last year. Would you say, safe to say it probably won't be 35, but I think some fantasy people are just taking as an article of faith. He's going to be attempting like 27 passes a game. And it sounds like what you're saying. There might be weeks like that, of course, but that they're not going to totally just bottle up their franchise guy in Justin Herbert.
Yeah, exactly. You don't pay the guy, $50 million per year just to kind of play it safe and be a game manager. And okay, let's obviously less is more sometimes, but I still expect some good range there. And maybe this could be good for Justin Herbert because he kept focusing a lot on Keenan Allen and Mike Williams, and you kind of give it to those two guys. Now maybe you spread the ball around, You got to get younger guys more involved. I'm sure we're going to talk about Ladd McConkey, the younger receivers, obviously Quentin Johnston, what he could do in year 2. But I'm actually excited for Justin Herbert to see what he could do, because I know he gets knocked for the lack of playoff wins, the lack of wins overall in the regular season, but this guy's a stud. He got paid for a reason. Like, I covered his rookie year. You could tell off the bat, with CJ Stroud last year, Justin Herbert did it a few years ago. So it could be a good year for him to kind of spread the ball around. Look at Jordan Love. He doesn't have a number 1 wide receiver, but he spread the ball around. And sometimes that does you a little bit to kind of not focus on 1 or 2 guys. So, I know Jim Harbaugh hasn't been in the NFL in 9 years. I know Jim Harbaugh's reputation is run the football a lot, but I think he wanted that job in Los Angeles, and it took a lot for Jim Harbaugh to leave Michigan. Yeah, there's some backstories there that we don't have to get into, but one of the biggest reasons he left was because there was a quarterback in place in Justin Herbert.
Yeah, the backstory alluded to is, of course, he could not stop getting suspended.
There you go.
He made a sport out of it. He was good at it.
Yeah.
You mentioned those young receivers. Denny's going to ask you about that.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say that you made such an important point about Harbaugh, where the guy did pick a spot to return to the NFL, and couldn't help but know it. He didn't go somewhere that had like a lottery pick and needed a quarterback. He went somewhere that had the quarterback in place, and that is something we are overlooking a lot.
Before I get into McConkey, I just wanted to briefly mention that from a pass volume standpoint, massive pass volume has not worked for Justin Herbert so far. So we might as well try the other thing, which is low pass volume, maybe like you said, more efficient passing.
Just make him not have to do everything. Yeah, exactly.
That could work better. Yeah. So, to McConkey here, obviously the Chargers have a thin receiver corps, maybe one of the thinnest in the NFL right now. They use a top 40 selection on McConkey. What do you think the odds are that McConkey actually ends up as this team's kind of unquestioned number 1 receiver?
Yeah, well, first of all, Dan, let me know if the gardener's too loud back here. I will definitely close the window if it's not.
I can't hear it.
Okay, cool, perfect.
It's always in your home office. It always sounds like you're like in the middle of a construction site, and then no one else can ever hear it.
Yeah,
and it always happens when I'm recording too, like a podcast or show or whatever. But okay, just want to double check, Denny. But that's a good question on Ladd McConkey. Like I mentioned, I used to cover the Chargers pretty heavily on a daily basis, so I know a lot of people there, and beat reporters like Fernando Ramirez, Jeff Miller, Daniel Popper. They've told me this guy's not dropping passes; he's catching the ball. And I remember, obviously, last year Quentin Johnston was supposed to be that guy, and he kept dropping the ball. So that's a good sign for Ladd McConkey that he was catching the football. He's a great route runner. He gets open quickly, and that's what you want. Friendly target for Justin Herbert. So. Obviously he's still a rookie, so you kind of want to ease him into it. So I don't know he'll be the number 1 wide receiver just yet. But when you could run routes like that, you get open, you could catch the football, you're reliable. He could be definitely critical, on third downs, be the number 3 or 2 receiver. But I think Denny, to start off the season, obviously don't overlook Joshua Palmer. Palmer was the 3rd guy behind Keenan Allen and Mike Williams. And we forget sometimes that Palmer had 900 yards receiving in 2022. I want to say last year around 700 receiving yards. So. When Keenan got hurt or Mike Williams got hurt, Palmer has shown that he was able to step up. Yeah, he's definitely not a number 1 guy, but when you have experience and you've been around Justin Herbert, those are things that are advantage for him to get some targets early on in the season. But hey, if you want to get use a late draft pick on Ladd McConkey, go ahead and do it, because everything I've heard, I'm not there on the daily anymore, but everything I've heard, he's been catching the football, he's been doing well. So I can see him cracking the top 3. One thing, Denny, that I've noticed, I'm not going to say there's something to this, but Jim Harbaugh is making the rookies earn it. So when you see the starting unit, it's Joshua Palmer, Quentin Johnston, DJ Chark. So players who have experience have been going with the number 1s with Justin Herbert. But when Ladd McConkey gets his opportunities, with number 2s and number 3s, he's making plays out there. So it's not going to take him that long to move up the ladder.
I feel like Palmer is kind of the boring answer here. I'm not saying that your answer is boring, but I mean, as we talk about the Chargers receiver room, like it might just be Palmer. I mean, like that's definitely a possibility, I feel like.
Well,
yeah. Go ahead.
No, you go, Gilberto.
No, I was going to say, it's tough saying that answer because he's not going to be a number 1. But I think to start out, I think Herbert will look his way. But like I mentioned, Jordan Love, he has a bunch of guys out there, and maybe it could be Christian Watson, but it hasn't been. So, he has his Dontavian Wicks, Jaden Reed. So when you got Quentin Johnston, Joshua Palmer, DJ Chark, Ladd McConkey, I don't know about Brendan Rice, but maybe he could do something too. But there's a lot of guys out there to spread the ball around where maybe 4 or 5 guys could get over 700 receiving yards, and that could be very good for an offense for Justin Herbert.
Yeah, I'm going to ask about Quentin Johnston in just a second, but it's maybe the most like obvious answer for who the Chargers' number one receiver is? Is it there's just not going to be an obvious number one receiver, and it's kind of a collection of role players? Are you getting that set? Is it even a competition that someone's going to win, or is it more just like this is a grab bag receiver core? You're all going to have your role. There's not going to be a true alpha, unless someone makes it undeniable. Is that kind of the sense you're getting?
Yeah.
Or,
yeah. If you want me to give you kind of sort of an answer, not a boring answer, Denny here. Yeah, it could be definitely no number ones, but if you're going off of potential and skill set, and it's kind of playing up to your question, Patrick, it could be Quentin Johnston. He has the skill set to be a number one. He was drafted in the first round for a reason, but he just can't catch the ball. So I can't give you Quentin Johnston as an answer. But if I had to put kind of, money on some guy to develop, maybe not this year, I don't know. But I'm a fan of Quentin Johnston's skill set. But when you play receiver, you got to catch the football. But we'll get into it right now.
Well, that's what I was going to say. So QJ, he's a first-round pick. As I love to point out, he was a first-round pick who went nuclear against Jim Harbaugh in the college football playoff 2 years ago. So I'm sure Jim Harbaugh remembers that performance. And what I've noticed with the Chargers coaching staff is it seems like they're going to great pains to wipe the slate clean for Quentin Johnston, because no way to sugarcoat the rookie season. Like he just straight up didn't catch the ball, which is not acceptable for any receiver, but especially a first-round receiver. It was just so disappointing. But so do you think that's kind of like coach speak that, they've talked up his improved route running? I think Sanjay Lau said he's got a lot of juice. They said he's going to really launch. They're talking him up. They're wiping the slate clean. Do you get the sense that that's coach speak, or that they are genuinely excited about Quentin Johnston?
I'm going to buy into what they're saying, Patrick, because, I was talking to my good friend Fernando Ramirez, who covers the Chargers for the Sporting Tribune. He reminded me what Sanjay Lau last year was with the Seahawks, and they needed a wide receiver. So they did a lot of homework on Quentin Johnston. I'm not sure how much that says, because they ended up taking Jackson Smith and Jigba one spot ahead of Quentin Johnston, but he's not the one making the picks, right? So he had a lot of research on Quentin Johnston. So maybe what he's saying is true. Then you look at the GM for the Chargers, Joe Ortiz, who came from the Baltimore Ravens. He didn't get an opportunity to draft Quentin Johnston because the Chargers took him one spot ahead, and they took Zay Flowers. So those three guys went, 1, 2, 3 right there in that order of 2023. So what I'm trying to say is Joe Ortiz and Sanjay Lau, they did their research. They know what they have in Quentin Johnston. And, I want to say this. I think Jim Harbaugh is one of those tough guys that, he probably wouldn't care that he inherited, a first-round pick. Like, okay, well, I didn't draft you. Get out of here. Go back to the line here. You're not my guy. But I think Jim Harbaugh sees the skill set and a guy like Quentin Johnston. It's just, again, it sounds so dumb to say he has the whole package but can't catch the football. But he has to get over that. It's a mental thing there, because it's not just, obviously we've talked about it, during the lead up to the 2023 draft. Like, if he didn't have that issue with the dropping passes, he might be for sure number one, the number one overall pick and wide receivers. I know Jackson Smith and Jigba was safer, but he could have been like a top 15 prospect. But as he gets over that mental hurdle. And last year they did him no favors when Mike Williams got hurt. Okay, Mike is gone. Quentin, go be number two. You're supposed to be the guy to take over from Mike Williams because he was on a contract year. Maybe the plan was for him to get more targets in 2024. That didn't work out. He got hurt. Keenan Allen got hurt at the end of the year. Justin Herbert got hurt at the end of the year. So it was a rough year for, I guess, his mental obstacles. But maybe he's gotten over that, or maybe he's been thinking about it a lot. Who knows? But I'm not ready to give up. If you're asking me, I'm not ready to give up on that skill set after 1 year.
So we talked a lot about the receivers. Denny's we know where the fantasy value is actually going to be is the backfield. And Denny is
you mentioned a few minutes ago, Gus Edwards and J.K. Dobbins, and obviously they will factor in. Gus Edwards is dealing with an injury that could put him out until training camp.
Do you know what it is? Does anyone know what it is?
Where it's lower body.
Yeah. Well, Jim Harbaugh says that Gus Edwards is going to be ready for training camp, so that's a good sign.
Yeah. So we, we'll monitor that. Obviously, check out Rotoworld for updates throughout the summer. J.K. Dobbins says he's 100%. He always saying he's 100%. So I don't really know how much stock we can put in that. Obviously, the only person we've talked about in fantasy football this summer is Kimani Vidal, the rookie 6th rounder. So is there a path for him to, take on that every down role, or even, some sort of role here? Or do you think that the veterans are just going to mix in? The veterans, who are very familiar, by the way, with Greg Roman's offensive system.
Yeah, I checked in again with some Chargers beat reporters. Fernando told me that they are, they are high on Kimani Vidal, in a 6th round pick there to get some carries. But the way he laid it out was saying, okay, 40% Gus Edwards, 40% J.K. Dobbins, and 20% Kimani Vidal. So I don't know how many, you want to go off of 20%. That's not high, but maybe, he finds a path because, like you mentioned, Danny, I could hear how you're not buying J.K. Dobbins being healthy, and I'm kind of with you because it's been many years where it's finally the year for J.K. Dobbins, and he gets hurt. And I probably shouldn't say this story, but when I went to go check out Chargers camp OTAs, I saw J.K. Dobbins working on the side. I'm like, oh, I thought he was healthy. Why is he hurt? I'm like, oh no. He's like, no, he's just working out by himself. He's not hurt. That's the injury side is over there. So I'm just assuming that he's still hurt, but he's not. So he's fine. But the story is I keep thinking maybe he's hurt, maybe he's not. But he was working by himself. I don't know what that means, but they were telling me everything is fine. And then with Gus Edwards, Jim Harbaugh says he'll be ready for training camp. So maybe that's why he was working out by himself, because Gus Edwards wasn't ready. Maybe Kimani Vidal was doing whatever he was doing the day that I went. But it's just tough to buy into J.K. Dobbins until you see him on the field. And if this was 3 years ago, you would think for sure he's the number one. That's why I'm saying when we talk about Justin Herbert's volumes, if you're going to run the football heavily, I just don't see it with this group here, because I like Gus Edwards, but you got to get to the red zone for him to do his magic and do what he does best there. So, Gus Edwards to me seems like the safer pick because, you might not get those, the 20 carries and 120 yards rushing, but you probably get the, 12 carries for 40 yards and a touchdown. And that's people want a touchdown in fantasy football. So, well, the long answer is I think there might be a path for Kimani Vidal because J.K. Dobbins, you can't trust them, and Gus Edwards has this special area of short yardage situation. But again, it's hard to trust a 6th round pick. But when you're a running back in the NFL, you see that often because people don't want to spend a 2nd or 1st round pick on a running back. So I'm not saying go and get a lot of stock on Vidal, but there is a path there for him because of the injury history with J.K. Dobbins, and then you've seen enough of Gus Edwards to know he's not a high volume guy.
It's true. So it sounds like you're saying right now we're a little bit ahead of ourselves with the Vidal talk, which is fine. Not what I wanted to hear, but
it's not.
But there's the path there. I'm not totally against it.
I'm gonna cope and cry about it. But I will say that Vidal strikes me as a guy who maybe gets a bigger role later in the season. A rookie who has to show that he'll pick up the blitz, right? And we have to pray also that he never misses one blitz pickup or he'll never see the field again. He'll be playing in the UFL within 10 minutes. So anyway, I like him. I think there is a path. I'm glad you confirmed at least that much. Thank you.
Just quick, your guess might be as good as ours, but who leads the team in rushing, you think, this year? What is your feel? Who has the most rushing yards for the Chargers?
Yeah, you're putting me on the spot here.
You can
say Vidal. I want to. You know what? Okay, Danny, I'm gonna go off of what you said. If this guy could run, pass protect, and be a good blocker, and I did cover the Rams for a little bit, and it reminds me of Kyron Williams' situation. He's not the biggest guy, but they loved him because he could pass protect, and he got opportunities for that. And he was a 5th round pick, right? I know Vidal 6th round pick. So what I'm trying to say, you find these running backs in the middle rounds, day 3 of the draft. As long as you could pass protect and you could get on the field, you're gonna get opportunities. So if Vidal's able to do that early on, I think he could definitely do that. But again, he's a 6th round pick. I don't know how much I could see in this. I do like the offensive line when you spent the 1st round pick on Joe Alt and you got Rashawn Slater and Joe Alt on the other side, that's going to help out. Obviously, the interior is going to be an issue, and we're going to. I think we know how this run scheme is for Greg Roman, but it could be different. And when you're with the Ravens, when he was with the Ravens, it's all about the middle, right? You got to figure out how to get gaps in the middle. But obviously, when you got Joe Alt and Rashawn Slater, it's going to make life easier. But you know what? I'll go with Vidal, Denny. It's not a great answer, but it's between Gus Edwards and Vidal. But we've seen the Gus Edwards, package. We've seen them, with the 30, 40 yards per game, and that gets boring after a while. And that's why the Ravens said, forget that. We're tired of that, because when it came to the AFC Championship game, you needed a Derrick Henry, and he wasn't around. And now they do have him. So they, they said, go to LA, go with the other Harbaugh. That tells you everything.
Yeah, you're singing Pat Daugherty's song there with with Henry. I just want to real quick for the listeners There is no indication that Vidal is a bad pass or blocking back. He had the third best Pro Football Focus pass blocking grade last year among all college running backs. So he seems to be good. But we all know that it takes one. It only takes one where Justin Herbert gets blown up, and then that's it for the rookie.
We'll get you out of here on this one, Gilberto. Anyone maybe leaning toward a skill player perspective? Anyone who has like surprised you in the Chargers press corps this spring, or is it still just too early? They still just getting to know Jim Harbaugh.
I jumped on Rotoworld, and I told my former colleagues I got to get my best stuff for Rotoworld, and they kept giving me the name DJ Shark. I'm like, really, DJ Shark? Like I've seen him, but he's experienced, and it's a very young receiving core. So, obviously he has also a role in speed and being a vertical threat. But here's the other name too. It was DJ Shark and then Darius Davis, a second-year wide receiver out of TCU. He wasn't used the way that people, a lot of Chargers fans were saying, like, oh, you're not using Darius Davis very well, and more like a gadget guy. I'm not saying he's going to be Deebo Samuel, but like you mentioned, Sanjay Lau said Quentin Johnston has juice. Well, Darius Davis has a lot of juice too, and obviously they might use him with the new kickoff rules, and he could be a speed demon for that. But he could also help out in the backfield when you have a committee and you're unsure about guys. Well, maybe give him a couple carries too. Maybe 4 to 5. That's too high, maybe, but a couple of carries per game, and then obviously use him as a vertical threat too. He's not the guy like Ladd McConkey is going to get high volume, get open very quickly. But these TCU guys, Quentin Johnston and Darius Davis, who were drafted by Brandon Staley and Tom Telesco, I think they're going to find a role with Jim Harbaugh and Greg Roman and Joe Ortiz as GM there. So DJ Shark and Darius Davis were the two names that I was given a lot. And then this one's the boring one, but I'm going to throw it out there. I'm not sure if you're going to ask me about tight ends. Patrick, am I getting too ahead?
No.
Okay,
We're about tight ends. Yeah.
Okay. Every time I looked up, I'm like, who's the white guy 88 getting passes? It's like it was Hayden Hurst. I'm like, oh yeah, Hayden Hurst is with he's with the Chargers now. I was like, and he was catching a lot of passes, but again, OTAs, minicamp is not the same thing. But my eyes when I was out there 3 or 4 times this offseason, he was getting a lot of passes.
He seems like the kind of guy who could maybe click with Jim Harbaugh and Greg, and so like that's an interesting name. A guy who should be a catch first tight end.
Listen, I for me, this is breaking news. The Hayden Hurst is on the chart. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, it took me a while to remember. I was like, I was checking my roster sheet, and people could tell me, that's Hayden Hurst.
Oh, Gilberto, broke news at the very end. Gilberto, thank you so much for joining us. G Manzano 24 Manzano on Twitter. X, as Denny insists on calling it. Sports Illustrated, the Monday morning quarterback. Really, really good stuff on the Chargers. Really good stuff on the entire NFL. Gilberto, thank you so much for taking the time to join us.
Thank you, Patrick and Denny. Appreciate it. Good time being here on Rotoworld.
Thanks, man.
Check out Gilberto and check out Hayden Winks when we come back right after this. It's the ultimate tryout for the toughest team to make. Elite athletes from all over the country compete for a chance to join Team USA in Paris, but only the best will be selected. Watch the U.S. Olympic team trials today through June 30th on NBC and Peacock. Now, it was Gilberto's first time on the show. Hayden Winks, not his first time on the show.
157th time.
So until he betrayed us, a lot of betrayal on this show. Kind of just never ending, really.
Seeking vengeance still.
Yeah, we are still seeking vengeance by having him come on the show and share his wisdom. Hayden, how you doing? And also, Hayden, we should have taken care of this off air. Do you truly need to be out of here at 1 p.m. Eastern?
I moved the other one back just for you guys. Did have some bad news. I did not win the Hayden Winks AI trials for the Olympic coverage on NBC Peacock. I did go to Al Michaels.
Hey,
close.
So, hey, we love it. All right, no, that's all I'm going to say. We love
I actually have it custom made so that you're just reading stats through my TV as the Olympics go on. So.
We love AI Al Michaels, and guess what? You might not realize you're talking to AI Denny. I bet you didn't know that.
You'll never know.
You will never know. You will know a lot about the Chiefs, Broncos, and Raiders. We're hoping because you know a lot about everything. You're very, very smart. Thanks for coming back to talk to us. We'll start with the Chiefs. And Hayden, we'll start with something Denny and I spent a lot of time talking about the future of Kansas City's offensive approach. And for a while, Denny thought there was no way they would abandon like their station-to-station approach that they so successfully employed last season that made them Super Bowl champions again. He's kind of coming around on the idea now that they really do plan to open things back up. And I'm just wondering where you are on this, what the implications of that would be. If Patrick Mahomes is being underdrafted as the QB4, they got the speeds guy, Xavier Worthy, Marquise Brown. We love our underneath guy, Rashee Rice, but we don't know how long he's going to be suspended. What do you think the state of and the future of the Chiefs passing approach is going to be?
Well, the Chiefs were like 10th in every offensive category last year. And like now, if you look at like upcoming point spreads, they're projected for first, second, or third in points this year. And I think the only way that you can do that is if you have some explosiveness. And last year they did not have that. I think every offseason move has been about opening up things downfield, and I've really missed it. So the hard part about this is which guy is going to be actually the one getting open downfield. Hollywood Brown, definitely the most experienced. I looked at last year. His deep target catch rate last year was abysmal with the Cardinals. Hopefully that rebounds this upcoming season. He's not just, even though he's really small, he does play like outside real routes, that whole thing. So I think that he's going to be out there for a bunch of the snaps. I think that when Rashee Rice comes back from most likely a suspension, he'll be the underneath guy. And then I think that it's up to Xavier Worthy on how much he can handle. I thought that he was really good, kind of like a worse version of Tyreek Hill. He's not nearly as physical, but like his stop start in the middle of the route, I thought was really special. But he's super young, he's super tiny, and he's been banged up a little bit. So I think he's kind of the wild card there. So I've been drafting Mahomes. I don't feel very confident in which pass catcher I want to pair him up with. But right now I'll draft like Travis Kelce late round 3, then Patrick Mahomes in round 4. And that's probably like the safest bet.
I feel like so, we're might be talking about best ball at the moment, but in redraft, if your league mates are kind of stung by what Mahomes did last year and he drops, to like the middle rounds, he's a guy, I feel like you just pick him up and just start him every week, and he's going to regress. I wrote him up actually in my regression piece for the Rotoworld Draft magazine. We're going to see regression to some extent, maybe to a large extent, especially with the addition of Worthy. I did want to ask though, Hayden, do you think we're going to see the same sort of approach that Andy Reid and the Chiefs have taken with other young receivers with Worthy and kind of be frustrated early in the season if he's getting 40% of the routes, 50% of the routes, and really like with Rashee Rice, we're begging every week, please get this guy up to 80%, and it didn't happen until very late in the season. Do you think that happens, or do you think that Worthy can just kind of slot in as a 70 or 80% guy right away?
I think he will be up there like 70-ish% of the time. I think that they're going to have Kadarius Sky Moore, one of those type of guys. Justin Watson's going to get his routes, not his yards. He'll get his routes though.
He's still on the team. I was hoping he wasn't. Yeah,
we'll have to look into that. But I think that Rashee Rice just was not he wasn't the most trusted player, and he also kind of was going through like almost like a position change, going from like outside kind of a downfield threat in college into being more of an underneath slot wide receiver. And I think that he wasn't getting on the field because they just didn't trust him to do everything a wide receiver has to do in the NFL. And that took a really long time. Like, it was very clear that he was the best wide receiver on the team, and they weren't playing him until the very, very end of it, despite having no other option. So I think Xavier Worthy is going to be more ready to play just because he's been productive at Texas for 3 straight years. He was supposed to be this guy. Rashee Rice was kind of coming out of nowhere. So I think that he's going to be out there, especially when Rashee Rice isn't part of the package. I think they're going to do some design stuff for Xavier Worthy, but I think that the upside case with him is if he can run real routes down the field, he's going to be more of a better and best ball guy, most likely. But I do think that the Chiefs, just looking at it right now, they were 23rd in deep target catch rate, 30th in ADOT last year, 20th in big play passes. Like, that's just unacceptable for Patrick Mahomes in the prime of his career. So if those aren't in the top 5, top 10, like, this is another kind of like wasted year of his prime. Though,
well.
They keep winning Super Bowls. The defense is going to be worse this year without Snead, I would just guess. So that's probably going to help Patrick Mahomes as well.
That's actually a good point. Something I wanted to hit on. From a fantasy perspective, I think we need the Kansas City defense to take a step back.
Please.
I mean, That they were making it real easy for Mahomes.
Yeah, stop easily shutting down Lamar Jackson.
I mean, really, like the fact that the Chiefs got good on defense is like the worst thing to ever happen to fantasy football.
It's true.
And so we're hoping for a much worse Chiefs defense.
We are. A few straight thoughts there. So Rashee Rice too. It might have just been, we found out after the fact he might have had some maturity issues, and maybe that played into it. And also, people might not think it's a huge difference. I mean, coaching staffs, though, will treat a first-round player a lot different than a second-round player. So maybe Xavier Worthy hopefully gets the benefit of the doubt. Like, well, he's a first-round pick. They act like there's some huge magical difference in like 15 draft slots. And this, when you guys were talking, I still feel like, honestly, I mean, this might be really dumb, like boomer brain, but so Josh Allen, of course, is still every year the best mixture of floor and ceiling in fantasy football. But I do wonder, Patrick Mahomes, the best real life player, is there any real reason he should not just always be the second quarterback off the board? Like if his worst season is last year, his ceiling is still, I think, higher than any of these guys as we've seen. He still had the highest ceiling campaign of any of these guys. I just wonder if we overthink it.
The rushing is what makes that answer a no for me.
Well,
I like Jalen Hurts as a bounce back guy. It was so obvious what went wrong. Like his we don't even know the exact extent of the injury, but he had something with his leg and it wasn't working properly. And then they could not pick up the blitz. And that became a huge, huge deal down the stretch. So I like Jalen Hurts in a bounce back spot. I think Josh Allen by default, but typically Josh Allen, I would view him as a second round option. And then Mahomes is a round 4 guy. This year, it's much closer because the skill talent has completely reversed between those two guys. But I think it's more of a thing where we're drafting these super boom bust wide receiver 3s, fringe RB1s in round 3, round 4, and then you have the layup line of these elite quarterbacks. So I tend to just kind of go with the round 4 quarterback, especially
not a spreadsheet guy anymore.
Hey, this is half PPR. People forget you can go play your bonuses and your full PPR. And you can scam your way to a championship. If you want to get in the streets over here, we can pass the football around with our quarterbacks.
I mean, you're right, Hayden. I was doing a draft, a redraft industry league the other day, and I'm thinking so hard about my 4th round pick, right? I could take this guy, I could take this tight end. You never know. Stack this. I'm like, I'm just taking Josh Allen, man. Come on.
Yeah, it's so easy.
Yeah.
The best ball streets, by the way, you reference. I'm going to reference the ADP on Underdog right now. Marquise Brown, wide receiver 32. Xavier Worthy, wide receiver 37. Do you see that holding, or do we see what do you think the camp narrative is going to be here? Because Denny pointed out it could be. The narrative could end up, the Chiefs always make rookie wide receivers earn their snaps, earn their role. But it could also be this guy's a first rounder. He's so explosive. Marquise Brown has burned me every single year. Why would I draft Marquise Brown instead of Xavier Worthy? Just how do you see this holding steady, or do you see this maybe flipping, reversing between Marquise Brown and Xavier Worthy?
When I was comparing the team projected points and where the ADPs are, the Chiefs top 3 in every projected total as a team. But they don't have a top 30 draft pick, which means somebody in this offense is severely underdrafted. So I think those guys are most likely going to stay. I think that we're still waiting for the Rashee Rice news. I'm curious if they'll use the commissioner's exempt list for that. There's a lot of options that they can do for punishment with Rashee Rice. So I think that once we get that news settled, I think that there's a chance these guys go up a little bit, but there's not really much room to kind of go up. I view that tier Terry McLaurin, Hollywood Brown. I think that's kind of pick your poison. I wish these guys weren't being drafted in the round that they are, because I can get Isaiah Pacheco versus Terry McLaurin right now. I'd rather have the guy that touched the ball 18, 25 times during the Super Bowl stretch on the best offense in the league in the 4th round, rather than go chase these vertical options on really bad offenses like Terry McLaurin.
Before we move on to the Broncos, and Denny, he's going to ask about the Bo Nix PPR scam, or not PPR scam, the Bo Nix scam. He's not just he's not just a niche scam. He's just a scam in general.
Yeah, he is.
Bo Nix. But Travis Kelce, you referenced briefly earlier, he's not even in the 3rd round. He's the high end of the 4th round right now on Underdog. I mean, we saw him slow down with our own eyes last year. Do you think that matters in fantasy, or should we just keep smashing the draft button on Travis Kelce?
I like him at the late part of the third round, early part of the fourth. For him, if you include his playoff numbers, the whole season looks a whole lot better just because he was probably playing through some injuries.
He was actually no. He was actually trying in the playoffs.
Yeah, and he was actually trying, which does help there. But the real like culprit was just the touchdowns. I mean, he would like hover between 8 and 12 touchdowns every year. And then last year in the regular season, he had 5. Then of course, when they were trying and they actually figured out the offense, he scored a bunch of touchdowns in the playoffs. And, I mean, to summarize that, with the Chiefs, they were hosting a tryout during the entire regular season. I mean, that's really what was happening between the passing down snaps and then also all the routes from the wide receivers, and then the backup tight ends were mixing in and stuff too. So once the tryouts were over, they actually figured out, okay, we have these 3 guys we can get the ball to. Then the offense started working. So I'm basically assuming that that's going to go back to it. So I don't think the receptions and the yardage will ever be there. But I mean, if he scored 11 touchdowns this year, would that surprise anybody? I don't think so.
It would not.
So,
No.
I'm drafting him.
Curiously, you guys didn't mention the biggest factor with Travis Kelce is that he became the first football player in history to get a girlfment.
Yeah.
You hate to see it.
And go to a concert.
I know, he's the first one to ever go to a concert.
He went to one concert, and we and you're not throwing that into your spreadsheet.
Yeah,
I don't know.
He bought one open button Hawaiian shirt.
Yeah.
He's the first guy in NFL history to ever do that.
Yeah.
Denny will be the first guy in NFL history to praise Bo Nix when we come back right after this. NASCAR is cruising into Nashville this Sunday, and then it's off to the streets of Chicago next weekend. 2 iconic cities, 2 huge races, and 1 home to watch them. Wave the green flag on 4th of July week by tuning into NBC.
All right. So, yeah, Pat has, he wrote up some questions. I appreciate that for this AFC West preview. The question is, can the Bo Nix scam actually work? Which is just, he's a huge hater, and I get it. And what I've said, and I think what I've gleaned off of your posts and off of your podcast appearances, Hayden, is that you lean toward yes. I think toward this can work because the nature of the NFL, lots of checkdowns, lots of safe throws. Bo Nix is a dog. Okay, Bo Nix has a little mobility that people aren't talking. Media won't talk about that. I think that in a well-designed Sean Payton offense, it can work. But please tell me you agree.
I of course agree. I mean, he's just more athletic. He's a little bit bigger than people want to give him credit for. And yeah, his stats at Oregon were a scam. Every Oregon quarterback, it's a scam over there. But we can use the old filter button on some of these analytic websites. And I removed his RPOs and his screens, any pass behind the line of scrimmage. And I just looked at his, big boy passes.
So 4% of his plays.
Yeah. There's three snaps, but he was first in PFF grade of all college quarterbacks, number 1 in turnover worthy play rate, number 2 in EPA, number 2 in success rate. So that removes the screens and the RPOs. Like when he actually had to make a play, like he at least knew where to throw the ball to. And the Oregon skill guys, like we thought we liked Troy Franklin, and then the NFL told us like we shouldn't like Troy Franklin. So Bo Nix still goes really high. Troy Franklin drops in the draft. So I think that's kind of promising. But he really ran the football. Like I think that is like the toughest part for people to understand. I mean, he had a bunch of red zone touchdowns. They would use him on 3rd and short situations. He can do zone read on occasion. They did do some quarterback power with him as well. So I think they're going to play much faster with Sean Payton this year because Bo Nix is going to get the ball out.
Yes.
He's basically the exact opposite of Russell Wilson. His problem though is the Denver pass catchers are absolute garbage,
including Troy Franklin, apparently.
Yeah, including Troy Franklin, including Marvin Mims, including Greg Dulcich. The Dynasty Twitter. This is what happens if they're GMs. They turn into the Broncos, and you drafted all the small guys. Courtland Sutton's very good, but they need some like yards after the catch guys, and we'll see who that's going to be. It's probably be like Jaleel McLaughlin.
So we'll get to Jaleel McLaughlin to say my favorite. So I actually mostly agree with the Bo Nix and. So, okay, he was in a scam system. Guess who runs a scam system? Sean Payton. So he found his guy and Bo Nix. That part is promising. The one stat that I kept, I think I've tweeted it several times and put it in several articles because I just can't get over it, is that Bo Nix played more college snaps than Joe Burrow has currently played in the NFL.
Yeah,
like if you want to know how experienced, quote unquote, this guy is, it is a little tough.
I'm good. I think that we have to get used to in the changing landscape of college football. We have to get used to these elderly quarterbacks coming into the league. Like,
that's true. Yeah.
It's gonna be happening more and more. And I think that we can't, unlike 10 years ago, where you'd be like, 25-year-old, 24-year-old, no way. I think that you can kind of come around on that. I will say the rushing is interesting, and I feel like Bo Nix is like the perfect late, like very, very late round quarterback if you miss out on all the early guys.
I'm going to ask Hayden about that real quick too. That's just such a great observation you both made. Like in the NIL and transfer, I don't need to say in the transfer era.
Yeah.
And there's just going to be a lot more situations like Jaden Daniels, where a guy who didn't mesh with the coaching staff and whose career might have never gone anywhere. He might not have gotten drafted if he hadn't transferred, can then become the number 1 overall pick. Like late breakouts are just going to become more of a thing. And it's not because they're old. It's going to be because they just ended up somewhere where they actually knew how to use them and unlock them. So we probably do have to get used to that idea. But I was wondering, so do you guys I guess in best ball where you're drafting 2 quarterbacks every draft, of course, Bo Nix is end up drafted, but there's still, Bo Nix is not ever going to have like a redraft ADP, right?
Not this year. He would have to be. I don't think he's that good. I think he's definitely best ball of worthy. I think that you should just draft Courtland Sutton. To me, Courtland Sutton looked really good last year on tape, and he did it through like touchdowns and downfield stuff, which you can definitely put in a regression piece that's not going to be sustainable. But I've seen Sean Payton absolutely target his ex-wide receiver. We saw with Michael Thomas, and now he has the distributor. What if like Courtland Sutton's targets go up by 20 across the season just because they're not trying to like find this like Russell Wilson?
They're not trying to subtweet the quarterback every play.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. So long story short, I like Bo Nix, but I'm drafting a ton of Courtland Sutton. He's like my highest drafted wide receiver on best ball right now. What can go wrong? Truly,
I don't like that. I don't like to hear that. Honestly.
Yeah, wow. It's kind of messed up, actually.
It really is.
Better in best ball. You mentioned Jaleel McLaughlin earlier. I'm just wondering, is there anyone we're rooting for, like some outcome we're rooting for, and what essentially is looking like it's a 5-man competition if you include Blake Watson in this Broncos backfield? Do we just want it to be last year where it's Davante and Samaje Perine and Jaleel? Or do we want it to be more like, what do we want from Javonte Williams, Jaleel McLaughlin, Samaje Perine, Audric Estime, and Blake Watson? I don't even know what to be rooting for here.
I think that Samaje Perine, like no guaranteed money left on his deal, that he's only on the roster right now because they're hosting tryouts between all these unproven guys. And I think once we get training camp underway, as long as Audric Estime or Jaleel or this Blake Watson kid shows up, then they'll finally release Samaje Perine on August 24th. And then we'll have a little bit more clarity. I kind of like Audric Estime, though, because Javonte Williams last year of his deal, he's one of the most inefficient backs in the entire league. Sean Payton didn't draft him. He's only seen Javonte Williams be bad since that knee injury. There's a chance that he looks way better in year 2, coming back from a big one. But Audric Estime is like the big guy. He's really young. He was really productive. Sean Payton actually drafted him. And we know that Sean Payton, if you're listing all the coaches, probably plays favorites more than most. So
that worries me a little bit with Samaje, by the way, because he didn't he have the most yards per out run in the NFL.
It was the first thing he did was acquire Samaje Perine when he was the Broncos coach.
But and then he, like, Blake Watson's the best UDFA in history according to Sean Payton, and then like Jaleel McLaughlin was one of his guys, and like that was very evident like early on. It was like week 1 or week 2, and like all of a sudden he was like a 35% snap guy. I was like, who the hell is this guy? So every single move that Sean Payton's made, and there has not been a lot of positive moves in Denver, it's been, how can I replace Javonte Williams? And this is a contract year for Javonte Williams, so he's not going to be a part of the future. So I'm playing it through Audric Estime in like round 17, round 18, and I think eventually we'll like all these guys will go up a round just because I think Samaje Perine will eventually get cut.
If I had access to a genie, I would wish for 3 things: lots of money, perfect physique, and the third thing would be who's going to be catching the passes out of the Broncos backfield this season.
Yes,
because I need to know it, Hayden. I need to know who's going to be doing this, because this offense is going to be made entirely of checkdowns. A lot of them to the running back, and man,
if you just claimed Bo Nix was good, now you're saying it's only going to be check. Very interesting.
Hey man, it's a check down league. So Jaleel McLaughlin, I think, is interesting because he was good. Okay, the thing is though, all of them were good as pass catchers last year, so I think it's the system that's good, right? And because we had Pierre Thomas who was good in this. We had what's his name, Kamara, and now we had last year. All 3 Denver backs were top 10 in yards per route run. Like what? That can't be a coincidence. So I would like to know that. I'm going to track that very strongly in the.
I think those running back yards per route run, targets per route run stats. I think that's a bad indication of how good Jerry Jeudy and Marvin Mims are, and the rest of those guys. It's Courtland Sutton and the running backs, and that's basically not an exaggeration until Josh Reynolds shows up and plays 80% snaps, which is definitely going to happen.
Well, that is what we're going to ask you. You said Courtland Sutton is quite literally your most drafted player. Is there a single other Broncos pass catcher that you're even having shares?
No.
That you're drafting at all?
Yeah, I mean these Marvin Mims sickos out there. He's like the wide receiver 64 or something. Like it's too much.
Sean Payton was basically like immediate, my bad on Marvin Mims.
Yeah. He's just too small, man. And he's not going to play outside. He was really young. And the way they used him at Oklahoma was kind of gimmicky, like a lot of option route type of stuff. So he was
surprise. Lincoln Riley gimmick too.
Yeah, trust me, my whole life is gimmicks.
I know your whole life. Lincoln Riley currently ruining Hayden's life.
It is true. But yeah, so I think there's a chance Marvin Mims has a better second season because he was so raw as a rookie, but it's going to be a rotation after those guys. And if Josh Reynolds does one thing, it keeps the small, fast guys on the bench. And Josh Reynolds is just too reliable of a guy. They paid him enough money. And then we're going to do the Tim Patrick thing in training camp. Get ready to write those blurbs, guys. I'm not sure if we can believe it.
Tell the staff to stop. Actually.
Yeah, it's a lot. Just draft Courtland Sutton and move on.
Should tell the staff to stop. Denny, take us into the Raiders. Ask the question we all want to know.
Yeah, right. Yeah, so we're shifting over to the Raiders. Whose coach, by the way, is in tough spot financially, per the reports. But
he really needs to keep this job.
Yes, he does.
Let's hope he can.
He's already asking about an extension. Too soon.
Too soon. Is the landing spot for Brock Bowers as bad as we think it is, or is there something that we're just not seeing here with the Vegas offense?
I think it is that bad. I mean,
all right, next one.
Next question.
He could be so good and such a PPR scam that it doesn't matter. But he has to be really good for that to happen. And I think one of his problems is there's we say this every year, and I don't mean depth at tight end as 20 guys good, but that Evan Ingram, David Njoku, I would throw in Jake Ferguson, Dallas Goedert, that tier seems much better for the tight end 8 through 12 type of range than we've had in rewind 4 or 5 years ago. So I think the competition to be a fantasy tight end 1 right now is a little bit tougher just because we kind of evened that out. But Brock Bowers, just use him in the flats was basically as good as you get. And they should be a scheme him up type of guy. But I think we know what Antonio Pierce wants to do. I'm not sure if we have any faith in Luke Getsy. Jacoby Myers is weirdly good. And then Davante Adams, well, I'm sure we'll get to him too. But I was looking at I came up with this man coverage composite score, which looks at every single stat that we care about: targets per out run, yards per out run, first downs per out run, and just to see who is still good at beating man coverage. And we had Davante Adams was in the 98th percentile when it comes to targets per route run. So they were throwing him the ball, but yards per route run, he was in the 56th percentile because the quarterbacks were so bad. So I think that Davante Adams still has it. You go back and look at Luke Getsy when he was the pass game coordinator with the Packers. Davante Adams, it was 180 targets every single year. So I think the franchise is Davante Adams. Make sure he's happy enough so we don't have to trade him at the deadline. And I think that's going to be their primary goal. And then everything beyond that, I think is going to be kind of up to how good Jacoby is versus Brock Bowers.
Can Bowers? Can he be a top 12 tight end? Are we getting too panicked with Brock Bowers? One of the best pass catching tight end prospects in quite a while, or is it just like you said, Denny and I started laughing and said Jacoby Myers is weirdly good because he comes up on the show. And, yeah, it is very, very unfortunate. And that even like the best ball Galaxy brainers who are hunting for any edge, they can barely get Brock Bowers into the top 12. They have gotten him into the top 12. It's the tight end 10. But do you think that's just too much like name recognition, too much wish casting of like if only he had been anywhere else? Or is tight end 10 even a realistic outcome for Brock Bowers?
I mean, if he had David Njoku's numbers from last year, wouldn't that be like one of the best rookie tight end seasons ever? I mean, David Njoku had 81 receptions, 882 yards last year. They're going right next to each other. So, I mean,
I don't get that. I mean, I feel like Njoku, like people forgot how good Njoku was.
Hashtag people forget. They do forget.
I will say with Adams, the metrics weren't super kind to him last year, but like ESPN's open score, he's 14th among receivers.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I don't see like a huge drop off here. And I mean, I think that whoever's the quarterback, Minshew,
and that don't whoever the quarterback. It's Minshew. Like I know we had to post that the other day. It's not AOC.
No. They like O'Connell for some reason. They really do.
They don't.
Pierce is all in on O'Connell. So whoever's, I mean, we're arguing. They're going to just rotate. Right, one is going to throw a pick six, and the other is going to come in.
This is not a bit. I think Minshew is a 17-game starter for the Raiders.
Wow,
that's Pro Bowler.
I mean, Minshew was bad last year. Like,
he was bad, except for one thing: locking on to Michael Pittman.
Oh yeah, sure.
Davante Adams.
Sure. I'm just saying, whoever's under center is going to be throwing it to Adams a lot. That's what we're looking for. Yeah.
So wait,
whoever Antonio Pierce's wife wants to be the quarterback will be the one who's the quarterback. That is for sure. They're desperate over there.
Yeah, whoever is gonna prolong this job as long as possible.
Oh my gosh,
that's Minshew, man. That's the veteran. You don't go. AOC is gonna. I was about to make a. Never mind.
Please no.
Yeah, no, please.
Not today.
Yeah, not today. I am wondering with Bowers, and you mentioned David Njoku, somehow the tight end 11. After it was a very good, is tight end is finally deeper because like Dallas Goedert struggling to get into the top 12. Like Dalton Schultz, we think the Texans will be opening up more up tempo this year. Like is tight end is finally deeper? We're not adjusting to tight end being deeper again, or because it's not as deep in the elite tier, but there's like more genuine tight end ones this year. I feel like.
Well, it depends on who you ask on this elite tight end stuff. Apparently, everyone is an elite tight end. People are calling Brock Bowers an elite tight end. Like everyone gets an elite tight end now. That's the definition of it. Yeah, I think like the top 12 is deep. Like Dallas Goedert, like used to be like called like an elite tight end. We used to draft him in round 6, round 7. He is now round 10. Yeah, that was curious. But even he has like some contingent upside back there. Yeah, I think Pat Frymuth has like a chance and stuff. So there are names out there, and there are at least some young names which you can kind of cling to. And then like with the Jake Ferguson types, Evan Ingram, like I think we can debate on how good they actually are, but they are just like in complete volume heaven. And I think Jake Ferguson's one of these guys who ran super, super bad with touchdowns, and like all of a sudden he can score 8, 9 touchdowns, and then obviously then he would be like a fringe top 6 guy. So deeper like through 12, I would say.
That makes sense to me. In the backfield, is Zamir White, who is backed up by Alexander Mattison, is Zamir White this year's Alexander Mattison? Like the guy who like just profiles, like he's an RB2 on paper because of the role that is seemingly right there for the taking, but he just might not be good. Now, in his defense, like Alexander Mattison went through an entire rookie contract without ever starting. Zamir White is still in the middle of his rookie contract, so it's not like this guy has gone through an entire life cycle without being good. But I mean, I do fear that it's like an Alexander Mattison rug pull waiting to in more ways than one, waiting to happen. Or is that too bearish on Zamir White? And is he a legit RB2?
Well, he was a 5-star and a Georgia guy, has the size to like really handle the workload. We've seen that last year. So I think that he's just going to be better than Alexander Mattison ever was. When Alexander Mattison was cooking, like that was a very good offense that he was attached to. This one's not, but I think that Zamir White's just a better player than Alexander Mattison. Mattison doesn't even make $2 million as his backup this year. This Dylan Labe guy is out of New Hampshire, more of just a rotational pass catcher guy. So I think that Zamir White, it's not going to be pretty, but he'll get his 15 touches per game. I think in half PPR, that's okay. I think the problem I have with him is all of the running back prices are so down that like I would rather like find a Isaiah Pacheco, David Montgomery, Najee Harris, and like not have to get down to this tier. So I kind of found like a couple running back values by the time I've even gone to Zamir White, just because the running back prices are so low. So it would make sense in half PPR, but I think in full PPR, I think I would probably chase a little bit more upside.
Yeah, right. I think that's why I'm not like super interested in Zamir White. I just don't see a path to a lot of upside. And
what about the path is Antonio Pierce saving his job by establishing the run? I was supposed to say saving his house. I messed up my own joke.
Oh man, that's okay. We're gonna edit that and post.
Yeah, get AI Michaels.
Yeah, please. AI Al, if you're out there.
So yeah, I was actually looking at Zamir White's college numbers to see if there's like something there. I mean, the production's fine. 22 touchdowns over his final 2 college seasons. That's fine. But like yards after contact per rush, he was outside the top 50 in his final collegiate season. Just nothing about his profile screams someone who can make a lot out of a little. So I think he's not going to be a killer in fantasy if you draft him where he's going. No. But I just feel like there's something better you can do at that part of the draft usually.
So Hayden he's talking about early round QB. He's apparently drafting like real running backs. Like, do you even still spreadsheet, bro?
I'm putting the spreadsheets to the test this year. I might go down completely swinging here, but yeah, I'm not drafting as many good wide receivers as I have used to. What can go wrong? But we'll see if all these wide receiver threes everyone's drafting in round 3 pay off. We've never seen that before, so we'll see.
It is insane. It is like very, very like how has every wide receiver gone by round 5? I would like to know. By the way, you guys, neither one of you sound like you think Dylan Laub is like the greatest prospect in the history of the NFL. That seems very curious to me. What was his deal? Is this stat like he has the most touches in like the history of FCS college football or something?
I think it's a bad sign.
No, it is.
Yeah, come on, man. That's not happening.
Davis Maddock.
Our friend Davis Maddock is very into Laub, who I don't even know if he actually exists, but
I don't either.
I feel like I feel like Mattison could actually be okay.
Yeah, we can. It
is true. Denny's right.
That part.
Here's what I know. Look, you guys, you're in your spreadsheets. You're looking at the analytics. I saw Alexander Mattison at the Super Bowl, and my man is big. I'm talking Derrick Henry big.
One of the largest humans I've ever seen.
Okay, so hey, you try to tackle him. You can't tackle him, and so I want that guy on my team. If I can't tackle him, I want him on my team. That's the process.
There are some disgusting like team RB2s available in round 18. Alexander Mattison is one, like the Tank Bigsby types. Trey Sermon is making a run at the Jonathan Taylor Backus job. Yes. Pick your poison with these guys, but they are draftable on Underdog, sadly.
Evan Hall was Dylan Laub before Dylan Laub was. Evan
Hall would have had a big season last year if he didn't immediately blow out his knee.
Yeah, that was real big. Hayden, is there anyone we didn't mention from the AFC West? Is there anyone real quick you wanted to shout out on the Chargers, just or not? I mean, any name that didn't come up that you want to mention real quick?
Well, with the Chargers, they have their tight end 1 is the latest tight end 1 drafted across the 32 teams. Their running back is like 30th in team rankings, and their wide receiver is like 29th. Wow. So nobody's drafting any of these guys. My favorite one, someone is. 1 or 2 guys is going to be relevant. I would pick Josh Palmer as a great pick, just because he's going to be out on the field a ton there. They seem to like him. I think that he can be one of these guys where like he gets a contract extension. We're like, really? And then all of a sudden now we have like more confident in him. And then I think Kimani Vidal is like worth a shot, like especially in PPR leagues late. And I'm not sure if J.K. Dobbins is going to make the team. Like 50,000 guaranteed is. That's not a whole lot. So I would go with Josh Palmer. I mix in some Ladd McConkey and then mix in a little bit of Gus Bus, but I think my favorite is Josh Palmer.
I think Gilberto immediately started talking about Josh Palmer, and fantasy managers might not like it, but it is what peak Chargers receiver.
I actually think that I have to come around on Josh Palmer seeing 125 targets.
Well, my strategy is Courtland Sutton is my wide receiver 3 on every single team, and Josh Palmer is my wide receiver 4. It sounds bleak. I'm trying to win with elite tight end, elite quarterback, and elite running backs.
I have seen you reference this approach. Yes.
We'll see.
We will see about that. We'll see. Very hard. But no, man, such good stuff, Hayden.
Yes,
one of the true best writers, follows in the industry, doing amazing stuff with Josh Norris over at Underdog, both on the site and, of course, the podcast, the Underdog Football Podcast, as good as it gets. At Hayden Winks on Twitter/X. Anything you want to shout out or reference coming up this summer? What you got going right now? I know it's the time of year where no one really has anything going. But,
next week we're trying to do Sleepers Week. It's going to be our version of Shark Week. We're going to do sleeper shows and try to make a big deal out of it on the internet. So that should be kind of fun. But we need to get you guys on we're doing like a top 5 players, like a fantasy analyst can't stop drafting series, which has been a lot of fun. So eventually we gotta get you guys on there.
I appreciate that. I want to come on. Last year I misunderstood the concept and I gave you guys some wrong names, and it worked out. It worked out in my favor, but I'm going to be.
Do you know who they were?
So I don't know why I thought I had to mention someone who I was down on, and I ended up being like Dalton Kincaid is bad, and and then you guys, but I guess what happened was he was one of the guys I can't stop drafting, and so I went with it.
This could only happen to you.
and it worked out, Yeah.
It's like the debate thing. You have to like argue for the side you're against to further your own argument.
Amazing stuff from Denny, as always. Amazing stuff from Hayden. Thank you so much to Gilberto Manzano from Sports Illustrated for joining us off the jump. That was great. We got more stuff coming next week. We are previewing the NFC West. Johnny Venerable will be back to talk about the Cardinals. We have another guest too, so check that out. So for Hayden, for Denny, I'm Pat. Thank you so much for listening. We'll be back next week.
Hey, it's Matthew Berry from NBCSports.com and Rotoworld.com, and I want to thank you so much for watching whatever it is you just watched, or if nothing else, being too lazy to click out of the autoplay after this video started, after whatever it is you actually wanted to watch finished. But now that you're here, I'd like to take a moment here to ask you respectfully now, okay? I'm asking you respectfully to subscribe to the NFL on NBC YouTube channel. You'll get the latest Rotoworld fantasy news headlines, all sorts of great shows, including my own Fantasy Football Happy Hour. So go subscribe now. Again, I'm asking respectfully.